I never thought I'd be sitting in a courtroom, staring directly at the man who almost killed me. Dr. Marcus Keller, the respected neurologist who dismissed my symptoms for 2 years as just anxiety, now avoiding my gaze as I prepared to testify. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the collar of my blazer, the MRI scans of my brain tumor sitting in a manila folder beside me. A tumor he'd seen on my very first scan but deliberately chose to ignore. The judge called my name, and as I walked to the witness stand, I caught a glimpse of Dr. Keller whispering urgently to his attorney. 3 years ago, I'd been desperate for his help, begging him to believe me as my vision blurred and migraines left me unable to function. Now he was the one desperate, watching his career and reputation disintegrate with each piece of evidence. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Ms. Harper, please state your relationship to the defendant," the prosecutor said. I leaned toward the microphone. He was my neurologist, the doctor who told me I was imagining my symptoms while a tumor grew in my brain for 2 years. My voice didn't waver. Not anymore. I grew up in a medical family in suburban Boston. My father was a cardiologist at Massachusetts General, my mother a pediatric nurse. Medicine wasn't just a profession in our household, it was our religion. Dinner conversations revolved around diagnoses, treatment plans, and hospital politics. My older sister, Abigail, followed the family tradition, graduating from Harvard Medical School with honors. My brother Thomas became a pharmacist. And then there was me, the family disappointment, who majored in English literature. Someone has to actually read the books these doctors write, I joke at family gatherings, but my father never laughed. Dr. Richard Harper had mapped out my medical career before I could walk. When I announced I was pursuing writing instead, he didn't speak to me for months. "You're wasting your potential, Emma," he'd say whenever we argued. "You have the mind for medicine. You're just being stubborn." My mother tried to mediate, but ultimately sided with him. "Your father just wants what's best for you," became her mantra. What she meant was, "Your father knows what's best for you." I still remember my medical school rejection party, an event my father staged when I was 16. He'd gathered extended family for what I thought was my birthday celebration, only to announce that, based on my SAT scores and science grades, I'd never get into a decent medical school. "We might as well celebrate that disappointment now and save ourselves the trouble later," he'd said, raising his glass while relatives laughed uncomfortably. I fled to my room in tears, humiliation burning through me like acid. Despite everything, I craved his approval. After college, I took a job as a medical writer for a prestigious journal in Boston, hoping to build a bridge between our worlds. My father dismissed it as journalism with footnotes, but it was something. When I turned 35, my father made his grand gesture. He established the Harper Family Medical Scholarship for promising students from underprivileged backgrounds. The secret condition? If I agreed to apply to medical school within 3 years, the scholarship would bear my name instead of the family's. My mother thought it was generous. I thought it was another form of control. Then the headache started, debilitating migraines that left me vomiting and unable to see clearly. My father immediately recommended his colleague, the brilliant Dr. Marcus Keller. "The best neurologist in New England," he assured me. "If anyone can figure this out, it's Marcus." What none of us knew then was that Dr. Keller owed my father a significant professional favor, or that my father had privately told him about my history of attention-seeking behavior and hypochondria, a history that existed only in my father's mind. As my symptoms worsened and Dr. Keller continued to dismiss them as anxiety, my father nodded along in agreement. "This is what happens when you spend your life avoiding challenges, Emma. Your mind creates problems when there are none." I believed them both. After all, they were the medical experts. I was just the family member who'd chosen poetry over pathology. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary coincided with the worst period of my illness. The celebration was to be held at the Harvard Club in Boston, with over 200 guests, mostly colleagues from the medical community my father wanted to impress. Despite my deteriorating health, my attendance wasn't optional. "Your absence would reflect poorly on the family," my mother explained while helping me shop for an appropriate dress. I didn't tell her I'd lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks because swallowing had become difficult, or that I sometimes saw double when I tried to read. She noticed my weight loss, but attributed it to finally taking care of yourself. The day before the event, I had another appointment with Dr. Keller. My symptoms had escalated to include numbness in my right arm and occasional slurred speech. "Classic anxiety presentation," Dr. Keller said without looking up from his notes. "Your brain is creating physical symptoms because you're not addressing the psychological causes." "But I've never had anxiety before these headaches started," I protested. He smiled condescendingly. "That you're aware of. Your father mentioned you've always been sensitive to family pressure. The anniversary party is likely triggering these manifestations." I left with another prescription for anti-anxiety medication and a referral to a therapist who specialized in psychosomatic disorders. When I called my father to express my frustration, he sighed. "Emma, at some point, you need to take responsibility for your health. Dr. Keller is a nationally recognized neurologist. If he says it's anxiety, it's anxiety." The night of the anniversary arrived, and I forced myself to dress despite a migraine that made the world tilt around me. My sister Abigail picked me up, frowning when she saw me. "You look awful," she said bluntly. "Should you even be going out?" "Dad would never forgive me if I missed it," I replied, applying another layer of concealer to hide the dark circles under my eyes. At the Harvard Club, my father was in his element, moving from group to group, accepting congratulations, and introducing my sister as Dr. Harper, continuing the family legacy. When he finally acknowledged me, it was to ask why I wasn't mingling more. "People will think you're sulking," he whispered harshly. During dinner, I was seated between 2 neurologists from my father's hospital. One of them, Dr. Sarah Chen, asked about my work. "I write for the New England Medical Journal," I explained, struggling to focus on her face as my vision blurred. "Oh, interesting. You must have quite the medical background," she said. Before I could respond, my father interjected from across the table. "Emma preferred literature to medicine. We're still hoping she'll come to her senses before it's too late." Laughter rippled around the table. I felt my cheeks burn. "Dad, I'm 38, not 18, I said quietly. "My career choices aren't a phase." "Of course not," he replied with exaggerated patience. "Just like these mysterious symptoms that no doctor can diagnose aren't a phase. Some patterns never change." The table fell uncomfortably silent. Dr. Chen looked between us, then asked, "Symptoms? Are you not feeling well, Emma?" Before I could answer, my father waved dismissively. "It's nothing serious. Anxiety manifesting physically. Marcus Keller is treating her." Dr. Chen's expression changed subtly. "Dr. Keller is treating you for anxiety-induced symptoms?" "Yes," I said, though I'm not convinced. "Emma has always found it difficult to accept medical authority," my father interrupted, "even as a child." As the conversation moved on, Dr. Chen leaned closer to me. "What exactly are your symptoms?" she asked quietly. I started to list them, but halfway through, the room began to spin violently. I grabbed the edge of the table, knocking over a water glass. As liquid spread across the white tablecloth, conversations stopped. All eyes turned toward me. I'm sorry," I stammered, trying to stand. My right leg gave way beneath me, and I collapsed, pulling the tablecloths and several place settings with me. The crash of breaking glass seemed to echo forever as I lay on the floor, unable to coordinate my movements. "She's having a seizure," someone shouted. Through the haze, I heard my father's voice. "It's not a seizure. It's a panic attack. Emma, stop this immediately." As paramedics were called, I heard Dr. Chen say firmly, "This is not anxiety, Richard. She needs to go to the emergency room." The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was my father's face. Not concerned, but angry and embarrassed that I'd disrupted his perfect celebration. I woke up in Massachusetts General Hospital with Dr. Sarah Chen standing over me, her expression grave. "Emma, we did an emergency MRI," she said. "You have a brain tumor pressing on your cerebellum. It's been there for some time based on its size." The words hung in the air like smoke. A tumor, not anxiety, not attention-seeking, not imagination. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Based on the growth pattern, at least 2 years." Possibly longer. 2 years. The exact time I'd been seeing Dr. Keller. The exact time I'd been dismissed and gaslighted. When my family arrived, Dr. Chen explained the diagnosis and treatment plan. My mother collapsed into a chair, crying. My sister, the doctor, asked technical questions about the tumor type and surgical options. My father stood silently by the window, his back to the room. After Dr. Chen left, he finally turned to face me. "We'll get through this," he said stiffly. "I'll call in favors, get you the best surgical team." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Know what?" "Did you know there was something physically wrong with me? Did you tell Dr. Keller to dismiss my symptoms?" His face flushed. "Don't be ridiculous. You're in shock and not thinking clearly." But something in his expression, a flicker of guilt perhaps, made me certain. I pressed the call button for the nurse, who appeared moments later. "I'd like to see my medical records," I said. "All of them, including any notes or communications between Dr. Keller and other physicians regarding my case." My father stepped forward. "She's not in a state to review medical records. As her next of kin, I'm fully conscious and legally competent," I interrupted, "and I want my records now." 2 hours later, I had my answer. In Dr. Keller's notes from my very first visit, he had documented the presence of an abnormality on my initial scan, but decided not to pursue it based on a phone conversation with my father. Patient's father, Dr. Richard Harper, suggests history of hypochondria and attention-seeking behavior. Will monitor, but focus on anxiety management per colleague's recommendation. With my family still in the room, I handed the tablet with the records to my sister. She read in silence, her expression changing from confusion to horror. Then she passed it to my mother, who began to sob. "You saw the tumor from the beginning," I said to my father when he finally took the tablet. "You convinced him to ignore it. Why? To prove I was weak? To punish me for not becoming a doctor?" "That's not what happened," he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "I simply told Marcus about your history." "What history?" I shouted, pain shooting through my head with the effort. "You invented a history of mental health issues to fit your narrative about me. You risked my life to prove a point." The room fell silent, except for my mother's quiet weeping. "I want you to leave," I said, looking directly at my father, "and I want everyone here to know that I'm filing a malpractice suit against Dr. Keller and naming you as a co-defendant, Dad." My sister gasped. My mother pleaded, "Emma, you can't mean that. We're family." "Family doesn't do this," I replied, holding up the tablet with the damning evidence. "Family doesn't convince doctors to ignore tumors. Family doesn't gamble with your life to win an argument." My father's face drained of color. "You would never win such a case. My reputation—" "Your reputation is exactly what's at stake," I cut in. "How many other patients have you influenced care for based on your personal biases? How many other doctors have deferred to the great Dr. Harper at the expense of proper medical care?" He stormed out without another word. My mother followed, torn between her husband and daughter. Only my sister remained, sitting beside my bed in shocked silence. "I'll testify for you," she finally said. "What he did, what they both did, it's unforgivable." The surgery to remove my tumor was successful, though recovery was brutal. 6 weeks of radiation followed, leaving me exhausted and temporarily unable to work. Throughout this time, the only family member consistently by my side was Abigail. My mother visited occasionally, always alone and always in tears. My father sent expensive flower arrangements, but never came himself. While I was fighting for my health, my legal team was building a case against Dr. Keller and my father. Medical ethics experts were horrified by the documentation showing Keller had knowingly ignored a visible tumor based on a colleague's personal opinions about a patient. Even more damning were the text messages we subpoenaed between the two men, where my father had written, "Emma needs to learn that real illness isn't something you can dramatize for attention. A few months of anxiety treatment might finally teach her some humility." As word of the lawsuit spread through Boston's medical community, unexpected allies emerged. 3 of Dr. Keller's former patients contacted me with similar stories of dismissed symptoms that later proved to be serious conditions. 2 nurses from my father's department anonymously provided statements about his pattern of differential treatment for patients he deemed difficult or attention-seeking. The most surprising support came from Dr. Chen, who risked her professional standing to testify about medical negligence. "In 20 years of practice," she told my lawyer, "I've never seen such a blatant case of a physician allowing personal bias to override clear medical evidence." Meanwhile, the Harper Family Medical Scholarship was quietly renamed, my father's name now the only one associated with it. The irony wasn't lost on me. His grand gesture became his lone legacy as his reputation crumbled. 6 months after my surgery, I received an unexpected visit from my mother. She sat awkwardly in my apartment, twisting her wedding ring. "Your father and I are separating," she said finally, "after 40 years. I waited, unsure how to respond. "When I saw those records," she stopped, composing herself, "I realized I've been enabling his behavior for decades, not just toward you, but toward patients, colleagues, everyone. I convinced myself it was loyalty, but it was cowardice." She reached for my hand. "I should have protected you. I'm so sorry, Emma." That conversation began a slow, difficult healing between us. My mother started therapy, moved into her own apartment, and gradually reclaimed her identity beyond being Dr. Harper's wife. My relationship with Thomas remained strained. He believed I was destroying the family name for revenge. But Abigail and I grew closer than ever. "I spent years trying to earn Dad's approval by becoming exactly what he wanted," she confessed one night. "Watching you stand up to him made me realize how much of myself I've sacrificed." The lawsuit never went to trial. Dr. Keller's insurance company, seeing the overwhelming evidence, offered a substantial settlement. My father, however, refused to settle, insisting on his day in court. His attorneys advised against it, but his pride wouldn't allow him to admit wrongdoing. That's how I found myself in that courtroom, preparing to testify against the 2 men who had gambled with my life. As I detailed my symptoms, the dismissals, and the eventual diagnosis, I watched the jury's expressions shift from interest to disbelief to outrage. When my father's texts were read aloud, several jurors visibly recoiled. During cross-examination, my father's attorney tried to paint me as the unstable, attention-seeking daughter my father had described. "Isn't it true that you've always resented your father's success, that this lawsuit is simply another way to rebel against his authority?" I resented being told that my worth was tied to following a career path I didn't want, I replied calmly. I resented being diagnosed by someone who had never examined me. But I never resented his success, only his abuse of that success to control those around him. The trial lasted 9 days. The jury deliberated for less than 5 hours before finding both men liable for malpractice. The financial penalty was significant, but the professional consequences were devastating. Dr. Keller surrendered his medical license rather than face disciplinary proceedings. My father kept his license but lost his hospital privileges and most of his private practice. The unexpected twist came 3 months after the verdict. I received a letter from the New England Medical Journal's editor-in-chief offering me a position covering medical ethics and patient advocacy. "Your experience and perspective are invaluable," he wrote. "The medical community needs voices like yours to ensure we never lose sight of the humans behind the diagnoses." I accepted the position and began writing a series of articles examining how power dynamics, bias, and professional courtesy impact patient care. This series won a National Journalism Award and is now required reading in several medical schools' ethics courses, including Harvard's. A year after the trial, I received a text from my father. "I was wrong. About everything. I'm sorry." Nothing more. No request for forgiveness or reconciliation. Just an acknowledgement, finally, of the truth. I never responded. Some bridges, once burned, should remain ashes. Instead, I channeled my energy into creating a patient advocacy nonprofit that helps people navigate complex medical situations and question diagnoses when necessary. At our first fundraising event, Dr. Chen introduced me to a neurosurgeon who had just returned from a year with Doctors Without Borders. "He read your articles and wanted to meet you," she explained. As Dr. Michael Lawson and I talked about patient autonomy and medical paternalism, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: intellectual respect without condescension. 6 months later, he became both my partner in life and in advocacy work. Together, we created training programs for medical students focused on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias in healthcare. Today, 5 years after my diagnosis, I'm cancer-free and running one of the country's leading patient advocacy organizations. The tumor that nearly killed me ultimately gave me purpose. Not because suffering is somehow noble, but because surviving it showed me how many others need a voice when facing medical gaslighting and negligence. My father and I have never reconciled, but that's okay. I've built a new kind of family, one based on mutual respect rather than control. And every time our organization helps a patient get proper treatment after being dismissed, I feel a different kind of healing take place. If my story resonates with you, remember this: your symptoms are valid, your experiences matter, and sometimes the most important second opinion is your own. Trust your body and your instincts, and never stop advocating for yourself, even when, especially when, the experts tell you it's all in your head. If you found value in my story, please subscribe to this channel for more content on patient advocacy and medical ethics. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that their health concerns deserve to be taken seriously. Together, we can create a healthcare system that truly listens to patients first.